wannabe Jedis and survivors of Pink Eye, you can call me Nick the Slick. Not much to know about me. I did a podcast, didn't do much with it. I'm a musician, and I'm a lover of film. I actually happen to be in film school myself, working towards my bachelor's degree. So, hey, maybe I'm a little intelligent, or I'm an idiot. Probably both, but we'll see how this goes. I recently watched Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker twice, and it was piss poor garbage. At least in my humble opinion anyway. For those who don't know already, there's going to be spoilers in this. I'm not gonna do a spoiler-free review because I think that would be hard enough as it is. It's been out for a good few weeks already, I think almost a month. And if you haven't seen it, you definitely should. If you're a Star Wars fan, you might just enjoy it just because it's the last movie. It had its ups, I'll be honest. It had a lot of downs as well. It was an obligatory finale, and for what it was a hot mess. Matter of fact, Leia tells Rey at the start of the movie, nothing's impossible. And boy, was she right. This movie was all over the place. A lot of plot holes, a lot of great stuff, but once again, a lot of bad stuff. Let's dive into it. So let's start with the pros. For what it's worth, the filmmakers managed to pull a pretty decent story considering how much The Last Jedi pretty much screwed things up. There were a lot of things in this movie that were pretty good. A lot of stuff that The Last Jedi seemingly ruined, they actually managed to piece together and handle quite nicely. I.e. Leia's random powers of being a Jedi to some degree. They kind of fixed Rey. They ended it probably the best way they could, for what it's worth. Another good pro was that they actually got something out of C-3PO. They actually used Anthony Daniels and utilized him to some degree. Albeit it was for comedy purposes, but, you know, it is what it is. You're not really going to get much out of a droid. And I think it's good that they actually got something out of Anthony Daniels or C-3PO's character, because the last two movies he's been kind of just there. Now he actually has some sort of purpose like he did in the original series, or at least he had some semblance of meaning in the very first movie. Now, starting out at the beginning of the movie, the opening scene was pretty entertaining, to say the least. One thing this movie did pretty well was its action scenes. Its action scenes were exquisite. The visuals were as great as always. I mean, it's Disney and it's Star Wars. Another good thing that this movie had was its dialogue. It was actually pretty funny. A lot of times it was pretty organic, I would say. And that's pretty surprising in a way, because we've seen in past Star Wars movies that dialogue can be very hit or miss. And that's a yay for me. Another really cool thing about this movie, it's kind of just more of a visual thing and a cinematic thing, but there's this one part where Palpatine does his little Force lightning thing, and he basically shocks, lights up, I don't know how you would phrase this, he electrocutes, that's the word we're looking for. He electrocutes every single ship in sight. It looked absolutely amazing. That's the great thing about these movies. Like, they might not have the greatest plot or storytelling abilities. It might really just be a whole ploy as to getting more money, because everyone's going to see this. You put Star Wars on anything, anyone's going to buy it. That whole malarkey with Palpatine, we'll get to in a little bit. It's a little all over the place, as I said. And lastly, when it comes to the pros, there was something that actually gave me a bit of happiness, at least helped my sanity. They actually gave a bit of backstory to Leia regarding her Jedi powers. See, the Rise of Skywalker actually touches on this, thankfully. There's a little bit of a backstory that Luke trained Leia a little bit. They didn't just, you know, have her feel the Force that Luke was alive in Return of the Jedi, and then in The Force Awakens, she feels that Han died, and then all of a sudden, Last Jedi, she could fly in space. We have never seen Jedi fly in space before. Now, seeing that was a spectacle, don't get me wrong, it's really cool that she did that, but at the same time you gotta wonder, you gotta think that when you see Princess Leia, she could feel disturbances in the Force, she could feel certain things. It's more so kind of like a thing where you're like, well, I have a bad feeling that while I stand on this stool, this wobbly stool to clean a shelf, I might fall and break my leg. It's one of those feelings. That's essentially what Leia had. And you know what? If Jedi can fly in space, how did any Jedi die in the prequels. It makes no sense to me. But as I said, there's pros and there was a lot of bad with this movie. So now we're getting into the cons of this movie. And oh boy, if you could see my notes right now, there are a shit ton of cons. Starting with, the whole movie is a big shit show crammed into one movie with all these plot holes because they rushed a lot of things. The entire first 30 minutes was extremely rushed, from the whole Sith Wayfinder thing, explaining how Palpatine's alive, which they didn't really do all that much. Maybe I missed something. They didn't really explain how Palpatine got launched into some furnace thing in the Death Star, and then all of a sudden the Death Star explodes, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's on this unknown planet known as Exegol, where he has an entire fleet that is bigger than the First Order, than the Rebels, all you can imagine. All of a sudden, Palpatine's alive. It makes no sense. You know that they literally put him in this movie solely because they had nobody else. They killed Snoke. There's no... Unless you bring Christopher Lee back from the dead, you ain't gonna get Count Dooku. You're certainly not gonna get Darth Maul. He said about 3 words in the prequels. So they had nothing. They really had nothing. You can't bring Vader back from the dead, so they had to bring Palpatine back. And they didn't explain it. And it was weird. It started weird, and it keeps getting weirder. So I'm going to try and go in chronological order as much as I can. More like chronological order. And touch on everything so I don't like go all over the place and confuse you guys. But I guess I'll start off with a little bit of nitpicking. A lot of this might actually seem like nitpicking. But I mean, this is Star Wars. You're trying to tell a story. Any film, you try to tell a story, you kind of want it to make sense. One of the things that really disappointed me was the franchise and the film not capitalizing on Rey and Finn. And I guess the franchise has been building up to this whole connection that Rey and Kylo Ren / Ben Solo have. But at the same time, there's also been this kind of hinting towards Finn and Rey. It's a little disappointing, especially when Finn has so many opportunities to tell Rey that he loves her, and he really clearly loves her. But in regards to Rey and Finn not having their romantic relationship or capitalizing on their romance, I'll just put this fancy little meme here that'll probably explain why they didn't capitalize on Rey and Finn. Hopefully I've got enough room and it's large enough for you to see. But yeah, this must be why they probably didn't show Rey and Finn as a romantic thing, if you know what I mean. This is a little bit nitpicking. We're diving into that territory again. They introduced these Knights of Ren, and they kind of, teased them in The Force Awakens. They didn't really mention them in The Last Jedi because Rian Johnson, everybody. Essentially, these Knights of Ren are a bunch of Boba Fett's that they kind of split up, and they gave them, they're just Kylo Ren cosplayers with fancy axes. I know they were in the last movie. They didn't have much time to actually focus on them. Obviously, they probably wouldn't have in the first place. But the whole Knights of Ren thing, it's just silly. It's just a bunch of little doorknobs just walking around with axes, and you think, well, that looks really badass. They just rejected Kylo Ren models. There's another trend in these movies, at least in this trilogy specifically, that this film doesn't really like to care about, and that is dead people. They really don't really care that you're dead. And that's just the thing with Palpatine. What's the point in even dying if Force healing exists? And if Force ghosts have the ability to inhabit the normal world? We saw it in The Last Jedi. We saw Yoda set the Jedi Temple on fire. In this movie, we saw Luke Skywalker literally hold his well, I guess it was Anakin's, his lightsaber. What's the point of even dying if literally everyone can just come back from the dead? We saw Palpatine get thrown into a furnace on the Death Star. The Death Star blew up. You're going to tell me that Lord Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, managed to fake his death, get in an escape pod, and get away. He was physically damaged in this movie. He looked like he was near death. and he was being kept alive by machines, so there's no possible way that he cloned himself. And if he cloned himself, he did it really it was kind of counterproductive to make himself look like that. But once again, what's the point in dying if all these Force ghosts have the ability to inhabit the normal world and interact? I just don't get why they just didn't get Luke to fight Kylo Ren or the Emperor just on his own. It doesn't really make sense, because like in these worlds, in these fantasy worlds, there has to be rules. There's always rules. There's normalities that happen in these movies, that happen in this world, and if all of a sudden, if everyone can just come back from the dead and inhabit like normal people, what's the point in even dying anymore? And speaking of that scene where Rey is like destroying Kylo Ren's ship, and she throws her lightsaber into the fire and Luke catches it, it kind of brings a whole new meaning to the word rage quit. Do you get it? Do you get it? I'll be hosting the Golden Globes any day. Fight me, Ricky Gervais. Now, I said we're getting weirder, and it really gets weird, to the point it's kind of disturbing. I'm just gonna put it this way. Palpatine did the nasty. And don't say it's midichlorians, because if it is, I don't buy that for one bit. I'll shit myself if anyone says that he got the midichlorians together. I don't know how that crap works. They didn't really touch on it. And Palpatine made a kid, who then made Rey. Even if Palpatine had children, how are we supposed to believe that nobody knew about it? How, like Vader, anybody in the Republic, he was Chancellor before he became, you know, all aged and disturbing looking, like the Emperor. Surely someone would know about this. And another thing about, like, Palpatine's kid that they don't mention at all, why couldn't have he been the Sith Lord? What was wrong with Palpatine's kid that he couldn't be the Sith Lord? Are you telling me that the Emperor of the Empire, the Chancellor, the head honcho of this Republic, or whatever it was, could not raise his kid and force him, you're going to be a Sith? Blah, 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 blah. No, he let that guy just grow up like a normal kid, a couple ages, have a wife, live life on Jakku, and then all of a sudden the Emperor somehow gets this vision that Rey is meant to be the Empress? Why does it have to be Rey who is meant to be heir of the Sith? What was wrong with Palpatine's kid? And also, let me paint a picture. I'm going back to Palpatine here. Let me just paint a picture for you guys, because even I can't follow this. So Palpatine first wanted Rey as a baby so that she could be his heir. Then he wanted Kylo Ren to kill her because the Jedi live in her. And then when Kylo Ren turns to the light after his fight with Rey, and the audience learns that Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter, all of a sudden, Palpatine wants Rey to kill him so that she becomes Empress. But then, when Rey and the reformed Ben Solo join forces to stop the Emperor, Palpatine takes their life forces. But Palpatine changes his mind and wants to remain as the Emperor. And not to mention, Star Wars apparently does rituals now. This was a ritual. I have never seen the word ritual even mentioned in Star Wars. The whole ritual involved her killing Palpatine, and then she would ascend as the Lord Empress of the Sith. But she was going to kill him either way because he was the last of the Sith. But Palpatine did this ritual that would, if she killed him, she would be the Empress. This is ridiculous. With that logic, I don't get why Rey didn't just run away from that cave, grab BB-8, and just have BB-8 just tase Palpatine to death. This movie was just utter rubbish. It was a bittersweet ending to a nostalgic but convoluted series. Rise of Skywalker had a rushed plot, and honestly, the film writes itself. It's recycled shit that we've all seen before. If reboots have told us anything, I'll see you all in 15 years when they reboot this crap again. They'll probably just bring Christopher Lee and Alec McGuinness back through CGI, and they'll just have some sort of big Force Ghost orgy just to sell at the box office and make toys. I'm telling you, this entire franchise has been run into the ground, and I don't know what they're possibly going to do to, like, resurrect or bring back any sort of credibility to this ruined franchise. At least in my mind. They use too much force.
That's not how the Force works.
You can call me Nick the Slick. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I'll have more reviews coming very soon. Bye-bye.